And for you guys to have a coach like this landing on your laps is absolutely spectacular. I was going to say if I was a Celtic fan, but I think after this appointment, I think I will be. All Celtic fans should be absolutely buzzing because you've got a guy who's a tactical innovator. And as I've said before, he's a serial winner. I mean, everywhere he's gone, he's won. He's developed players. He in the couple of years he's been here in Japan, he's completely changed, in my opinion, the way that football's played here. It's the way that they've been won. So if you're a Celtic fan, what more could you possibly ask for? A guy who has a 20-year a proven success record and has developed, you know, I mean, with the national team with Australia, he basically had to usher out the entire previous generation, you know, Kuhl, Viduka, all these kind of guys, and he's brought through a new generation of players who probably aren't as talented as the previous one, and he's still gone and won the Asian Cup, you know, with a team in transition.
What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. Something very different for you tonight. We're going to look back at a video from the 3rd of June 2021 when I spoke to Scott McIntyre, an Australian journalist based in Japan, about the prospect of a guy called Ange Postecoglou coming to manage Celtic. The video aged brilliantly, and Scott was so positive about Ange and his credentials to do the Celtic job, and my God, was he proved right with how the season panned out. So we're going to look back at the video, I'm going to react to some of it, and we're going to look at the comments section as well, which I'm sure will be a great laugh. The comments back from when the video was posted, and then the journey, because people have been commenting on it all the way through the season, talking about how well it aged, but some of the comments from the early days of the video maybe weren't as glowing. We're also going to look for any clues as to what the second season might look like, given that Scott was so accurate in his assessment based on what happened with the first season for Ange at Celtic. We're going to look for any clues going forward and see if we can get any more value out of Scott's insight, which, as I say, proved to be so valuable. So here we go. Before I get into it, you need to click subscribe below. We're rapidly closing in on 35,000. The quicker we can get there, the better. It would really help me out if you could click subscribe below. You just need to log in, press the red button, and that's it, done. How would you, as a neutral observer, describe his style of play? First things first, don't know what's going on with Barnett. This must have been in lockdown. It was last June during a lockdown. Try and ignore the hair. Shambles. Describe his style of play.
I don't know if it's fair to describe me as a neutral observer because I've been following his career closely for 15 years. You know, I mean, I've been with him at World Cups, been with him at Asian Cups, interviewed him many times, know him a little bit off the pitch as well. And yeah, I mean, it's been a curious couple of days really for me, for people in Australia, for people in Japan who followed his career and who have seen what he's done, not just the success on paper, but the way that he's created his teams consistently across multiple stops at youth national level, senior national level, various club teams in Australia, club team in Japan, and the Champions League. I mean, the guy's record is second to none, and yeah, just seeing the reaction of Celtic fans, it's like I don't know, like a kid's been given the best new present at Christmas, and just because they've never heard of it, they somehow don't want it.
Scott was very surprised at the reaction for the Celtic fans to the appointment of Ange. At this point, he actually hadn't officially been appointed. I think this was a few days before he was officially appointed, but the news had moved very quickly for the Eddie Howe debacle, and it was clear that Ange was the chosen one, or the second chosen one to be the Celtic manager, and then it moved really quickly. But I think the context is really important there. Yes, people were surprised when Ange Postecoglou's name came up, but you have to remember the context, the backdrop after how the last 12 months had unfolded. And let's be honest, the Celtic board have a history of some questionable managerial appointments. So when they spent 3 months pursuing one candidate and then it fell apart for one reason or another, when the next name that came up was someone that none of us had really heard a great deal about, it wasn't a surprise that initially there was questions. And I think that's, to someone like Scott, I mean, it must have been bemusing, and I think you can tell that in his tone, because he had witnessed the work that Ange can do firsthand, and he'd seen it in Australia, he'd seen it in Japan, and he'd seen it at national team level. So it was no surprise to him how good Ange was, but for us, knowing very little about him at that time, that's why initially the reaction was probably underwhelming. But Scott, he certainly puts that right. Now, there you go. This is something he did get wrong though, because he said that Ange was in the top 5 to 10 coaches in the world. And we know that after watching the journey we've been on this season, he's the undisputed #1 coach in the world. No, I say that tongue in cheek, obviously. I think top 5 to 10 is still a massive, massive compliment, but you can see why Scott rated Ange so highly. And we're about to go through numerous things that he said that we've watched this season unfold at Celtic.
For you guys to have a coach like this landing on your laps, and I mean, all Celtic fans should be absolutely buzzing, because you've got a guy who's a tactical innovator, and as I've said before, he's a serial winner. I mean, everywhere he's gone, he's won. He's developed players. He in the couple of years he's been here in Japan, he's completely changed, in my opinion, the way that football's played here, and the J League is one of the world's top leagues. It's nobody's second-rate competition. You know, I mean, it's Asia's top competition. There's a lot of excellent foreign players in the league, and there's a lot of brilliant young Japanese players who go into big careers, in Germany, Spain, Belgium, and so on. So it's a breeding ground for talent. It's an incredibly difficult league to win. It's a difficult league to do well in.
That's something that we've seen this season. We've seen Ange and his ability to develop players. You think about the guys that have been here. There's not a lot of them, by the way, because we lost so many players last season, and we'll come on to what a good job he's done recruiting. But Ralston, Taylor, McGregor's improved. You think about guys like Tom Rogic, who arguably had his best season. It turned out to be his final season at Celtic, which we didn't know at the time. But it's probably his most consistent season for Celtic. He's probably the fittest he's ever been. And that improvement in existing players really underlines Ange's ability as a coach. And Scott was right to point that out. And again, he's talked about the J League there. And I haven't watched any more J League than I had at this point in time. But what we have seen, and what he rightly says, is there's some great talent in the J League, and we've seen that obviously this season with Kyogo Furuhashi, with Ryo Hatate, with Daisen Maeda, Yusuke Ideguchi as well, who we haven't seen very much of, but it's clear that there's an abundance of talent there. We've got great value, and Ange had pinpointed the players from the J League really, really early, and he knew who he wanted to get, and he knew they would fit in to what he wanted to do. So again, that was great insight for Scott, because at that time he'd probably have questioned, is the J League any good? How good are the players there? I know there's some big Japanese players in Europe, but it's only when we've seen it firsthand at Celtic and the impact guys like Kyogo have made this season, just how accurate he was there.
It's just such an exciting appointment for you guys, man. You should be absolutely thrilled to have a guy like this coming to your club.
We were absolutely thrilled. I think after this research, after reading and listening and talking to people like Scott about Ange, the energy was there with the fan base, and it grew and grew and grew as the season went on. I think we all bought in to Ange early doors, and I think, to be honest, the value of fan media is shown here, and I think it's shown in this video. And I don't want to specifically blow the Celtic Fans TV trumpet, but if you look at the mainstream media in Scotland, Ange Postecoglou was totally written off. Guys like Hugh Keevans and plenty of others in mainstream media with their league predictions and where Celtic would finish and how he would fare here, and how his lack of maybe knowledge, and that's something that was asked of him numerous times in press conferences this season, and he shot people down for questioning his knowledge of the Scottish game and different clubs in Scotland. What fan media tried to do, and what we tried to do at Celtic Fans TV, was look for an accurate picture from people who know, who have watched Ange firsthand, and to try and buy into that and to trust in that, and for that to give us hope, and we did that. And Scott said there we should have been buzzing, and I think we were buzzing. You look at the games when fans finally got back into the stadiums, even when it was limited. I think about the first game against Michelin, which I wasn't at, but you could see the energy in the stadium just for the people that were there, the backing that he got when he came out for the first time as a Celtic manager. And as I say, it just grew and grew and grew. And there was a real energy about the place, and it was all because we bought in to what Ange was trying to do. He's the only difference almost from last season, other than the new players, of course, which he's responsible for recruiting basically. He's the big difference, and he's the one driver of all the change at Celtic this season.
I mean, with respect to the guy who is Eddie Howe and what he's ever achieved in the game. I mean, he's won one title, right? As far as I know, he's won one title. It wasn't even in the senior division of the league. I mean,
yes, this is the best bit. He's tearing into Eddie Howe. Listen, Eddie Howe is a decent coach. He's done a good job at Newcastle. He has taken the blood money though, which, I mean, got to lose a bit of respect for him there. And I think the contrast between Ange Postecoglou and Eddie Howe has got to be seen in that Eddie Howe bottled it for coming to Celtic because he wanted all the staff and he couldn't get them all. So he thought that's too big a job. That challenge is too big. The rebuild that needs to be done there against, probably looked at the Rangers team, Steven Gerrard, and thought, can I make up 25 points and rebuild that squad and meet the demands that Celtic will have? And he bottled it, right? I think the biggest compliment you can pay Ange Postecoglou is that he came to the club at a moment's notice, took on the challenge on his own, without any of his own staff, any of his own people. And as I say, he was the single catalyst for all the change and all the improvement at Celtic this season. Eddie Howe didn't want to do that. He didn't feel that he was up to doing that. Ange Postecoglou came with an unshakable belief in his coaching ability and his ability to manage this situation, which was a mess at the start of the season. We've talked about it at length for months, and we'll talk about it for years because it's probably the best and the shortest rebuild of any Celtic manager that I can remember. And the amount of self-belief you need to come for the other side of the world on your own and do that and trust in your ability to do the job and get the players to buy in and bring in so many new players and get them to fit in and to gel immediately. That's the value of Ange Postecoglou, and that's the thing for me that underlines what a great football manager he is.
You're talking about a guy who's won titles with different clubs in Australia in a salary cap environment, which is incredibly hard to operate in. The only difference is coaching. I'm referring to his time in Australia in the A-League. So it's an incredibly hard league to win. During that time, whatever it was now, 8 or 9 years ago, he actually went on a 36-match unbeaten streak in that kind of environment. Yeah, and I just can't stress how hard it is to have success in a salary cap environment. It is all down to coaching.
That's another thing I want to pick up on, because there's this narrative for supporters of smaller clubs that you win the league, big deal, you spent £20 million, totally ignoring the work that Ange has done, totally oblivious and ignorant to what football actually is and how it works, because spending money, as failed Celtic managers have done in the past, isn't the thing that gives you success. But there you go, salary cap, send it on, we'll still win it. He has to do his team talks through 3 or 4 different translators at Yokohama because of the Japanese players, the Brazilian players.
As a Thai player.
This is something, again, this season that's been so blindingly obvious, watching the team and being there in the stadium to see the team and how they play. The instructions are so clear. There's a clear identity. Everybody knows their job on the pitch. And that is, again, one of the biggest contrasts for last season, because we watched a Celtic team who looked like they didn't know each other, let alone what they were doing on the pitch. Whatever you think the factors were that contributed to that, that's what it looked like. They were a team without an identity that didn't know what they were doing. And this season, Ange has given them a clear identity, clear instructions, and that's why you've seen improvement in players who you might have looked at last season and thought, I don't know if he's even got a future at the club. It's because they've been coached properly and they know their jobs inside out. And you only get that through the years of experience that Ange has had, and as Scott highlighted there, translating to players in different languages, you have to be so concise. And that would have been, no doubt, a huge learning curve for Ange, and he probably found it much easier to communicate when he came here. Obviously, I know we still have players from different countries and there is translators in the Celtic dressing room, but the majority of players can speak English, and so can Ange, so he would have found communication probably much easier here than he did in the J-League. But that's something that just stands out like a sore thumb this season, that the players have clear instructions and the communication between the manager and the coaching staff and the players has been excellent. It can sometimes take 6 months, 12 months even for everyone to buy in and for it to click. Celtic obviously have this big rebuild period coming up. Do you think we will have to be patient if he comes in?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the word you use, revolutionary, is very good, because the way he plays, any coach can come in, can organize a team defensively, can have them hard to beat, to break down. And from what I understand, the standard in Scotland, there's a gap between, let's say, Rangers and Celtic and the rest. So, any coach who wants to come in and just play for points can come in and get the points. And then it comes down to the couple of games with Rangers or the European games. So anybody can do that. You can pick 100 coaches to do this kind of thing. But if you want to set yourself up for 6 years, for 10 years of success, and success, as I said, the way I understand it, that Celtic fans want to play, then you couldn't have got a better guy than Ange. I mean, Bielsa is busy and Guardiola is busy, so why not get the number 3, the guy between him? But
first things first, he says we would have to be patient. And the big outcome, really, even once we'd bought in to the idea of Ange Postecoglou and the style of football, we still thought at this stage, certainly last summer, given how the season started and the turnover of players and all the rest of it, we thought the first season will probably be too soon. Here we are, League and Cup double. We're actually ahead of schedule. But the most probably exciting thing there, and this is one of the things that is still to be seen from what Scott says, and we're giving him the credit because he was so accurate in a lot of things that he said. He talks about 5-6 years, even 10 years in terms of building the club, whether it's from a style of play point of view or how the club actually operates. That's the big long-term or medium to long-term challenge for Celtic and for the legacy of Ange Postecoglou, whatever it goes on to be, because we've watched Celtic years gone by and very, very recently have a setup in place under Brendan Rodgers where professionalism was really high, the team was coached at a high level, had a clear identity, and yes, Brendan Rodgers walked out the door at a minute's notice and tried to take all the staff that he possibly could with him. But how the club managed the transition between Brendan Rodgers to the next manager was a disaster. It resulted in a disaster, and it resulted in the eroding of the levels of professionalism, the standards at the club. That's my opinion. You may disagree with it, but that's what I think happened. And that was because the club didn't get the next appointment right, and they didn't future-proof the football structure of the club. So that's the challenge for the club. The club have to make the most of Ange being here, but when the time comes that Ange Postecoglou moves on, we have to make sure that we can continue the success and build on it, that we don't go back to square one with a new manager who's got a totally different identity, who wants to recruit a totally different style of player, and then we end up, as I say, back at square one and no further forward really from having someone who is so valuable here leading the club. We have to capitalise on that, and we have to build on it to take it into the future, to take the club into the future and get the most out of it. It can't be that when Ange Postecoglou leaves, that everything that he brought here leaves with him and Celtic end up back where we were last summer.
What I'm saying is that the ideology has been the same, but within that there's been tactical tweaks and variations year to year, moment to moment within season, game to game. But the thing that underpins it all is to dominate, is to be aggressive, is to attack.
Tweaks to come this season. I think this is something really, really important. Going forward next season, we're going to go into the Champions League. We have to go again domestically, and it's going to be a challenge. I think balancing going from the domestic football, trying to make the step up to the Champions League, and then having to come back and play domestic football on the weekend when you've been away in the Champions League, it's going to be really, really difficult. But this is something Ange alluded to towards the end of the season as well, that there is going to be fresh ideas, and whether it be in the form of different sessions for the players, maybe some slight tactical tweaks, whether it be in terms of shape, but the underlying principles are always the same. And that is something that's so important. That's something that's guided us to where we ended up this season. That's what won us the league. That's what got us into the position that we find ourselves in. Those underlying principles are never going to change, but it's really exciting to think about the tweaks and the slight differences that he's going to have to integrate this season. You would expect fresh faces to be a part of that, but it's going to be interesting to watch out for any tactical variations, whether that be in terms of formation, which I don't really expect in a long-term sense over the course of the season, a change in formation, but some slight tweaks, but the underlying principles will remain. And we know, even though it's going to be asked time and time again in the build-up to the first Champions League game, is he going to change his approach? Is he going to play slightly more defensively or take a step back against, say we end up playing Man City, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, whoever it might be, in match day 1 Champions League? Are we going to take a step back? Are we going to defend? Are we going to change how we play? And we're not going to do that. That is one thing that we do know. That is one thing that's guaranteed, that Ange Postecoglou has a way of playing, and that is the way that he plays regardless of the opponent. But really exciting to look out for the tweaks and look out for some freshness to be integrated this season, along with the fresh faces, and see where we can go. Because, as I say, we're probably ahead of where we thought we would be when Ange came in last summer. We thought it might take us 2 years to get the title back, and for his style of play to really settle in and to see the fruits of it. It's been 1 season. We have a League and Cup double. We're back in the Champions League. So I think we're ahead of where we wanted to be. And obviously in his second season at Yokohama, he won the title, and we thought the second season would be a much higher level than the first season, and that could still be the case. And it's such an exciting prospect to think about next season, look back at this video, given our expectations and where they were last season before Ange came in, and then even once he was here and we started recruiting the players, the mess it looked like we were in, how we were able to build a level of consistency. Scott talks at some point in this video about a 36 game unbeaten run. I think he maybe had it at Brisbane. We're currently on a 30 odd game unbeaten league run that we carry into next season. The levels have been so high, given that we're so early in this project, if you want to call it a project, in this era, in Ange Postecoglou's tenure. We're still so early. But looking back at this video has been a joy, because it's highlighted how right Scott was. And I think as the season's gone on, it's settled a few concerns, because we're going to come to the comments now. But I think even for me and for a lot of supporters, even once we'd bought in, as I said earlier, even once we'd bought in, we still thought it's maybe too early this season. And the job that he did to turn it around, to win the title and get us back into the Champions League, was absolutely massive. And it gives him such a strong footing now to go forward, and that is such an exciting prospect. First comment, Ross Moran. My man's out in a park belting his heart out about how much he loves Ange. He's living his best life. I need to say, Scott was excellent. He was so generous with his time, and so insightful. He seems like a really, really top journalist, and I was so thankful for his time. And it's been gratifying as we've gone through the season, because I remember doing this video. I remember the reaction to it at the time. but it's been gratifying to go through this season and watch so much of it unfold in the way that Scott basically said it would. There was some less positive comments. DB, an absolute cheerleader, this guy. At least he is honest at the start when he says he's not a neutral. Aye, you can tell that he's fond of Ange. Having watched him, having seen his teams very closely, but I think you can tell that he wasn't an absolute cheerleader. He was very positive about him, but it was based on fact. It was based on watching him, and it played out this season. A lot of what he said played out watching the team this season. You can see why Ange was rated so highly in Asia, in Australia, and it just so happened that that's the other side of the world. And here, where in Europe, where football is of the highest standard, we don't pay much attention and respect to football in Asia at times. And I think that has came back to bite us and came back to bite a lot of people, particularly in the mainstream media, as I mentioned earlier on in Scotland. So I don't think he was an absolute cheerleader. I think he was given his honest opinion based on what he'd watched from Ange Postecoglou teams. And like I say, he got so much more right than he did wrong. 5 months ago, listening to it now, that guy just put everything on a plate and predicted how it has went the past 6 months. Another true believer in Ange, and the guy just knew how it would play out before Ange even got started. He was already up against it. Fair play. Edmund All Young, so much fun scrolling through the comments on this, made about 7 months ago. As I say, so many brilliant comments in there, but to see the turnaround was fascinating as the season went on. Aaron Ward, this aged well, and Jerry Carlin, the last one. This guy was true to his word. A great manager, and we're about to win the title. Win the title we did. Shout out to all the Aussies on the comments section of this video. There was a few of you in there telling us that Ange was an outstanding candidate to lead Celtic, and that has proven true this season. I hope you've enjoyed following the content if you've been new to it since Ange arrived at the club, and I hope you join us for more again next season. That's it for this watch back video. I hope you enjoyed it. Like this video, comment with your own thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.